Welcome to our channel. We will narrate to you the real scary incident that will give you chills. If you are new to our channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. Let's start. Luis Hernandez was no stranger to long hauls. As a seasoned truck driver, he had traversed every conceivable route in Mexico, from the bustling streets of Mexico City to the lonely stretches of desert. Yet, none gave him as much trepidation as El Camino de los Muertos, the road of the dead. It was the kind of road that carried an aura of malevolence. Stretching through the heart of the Sierra Madre del Sur mountains, the winding path was flanked by dense, dark forest on either side. It was a road known for its treacherous curves, steep inclines, and, most chillingly, its ghostly legends. Luis had heard the stories from other drivers, tales of spectral apparitions, phantom hitchhikers, and eerie whispers in the dead of night. He had always dismissed them as mere folklore, but tonight, as he navigated his 18-wheeler through the forest under the cover of darkness, a sense of unease gnawed at him. The night had begun like any other. Luis had picked up a load of electronics from Oaxaca, destined for the coastal city of Acapulco. His route, unfortunately, required him to pass through El Camino de los Muertos. The thought of it made his hands tighten around the steering wheel. The first few hours were uneventful. The highway was empty, and the only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of the forest. As the night deepened, a thick fog began to roll in, blanketing the road in an oppressive gray. Luis switched on his high beams, but the fog seemed to swallow the light, reducing visibility to almost nothing. He had been driving for what felt like hours when he saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. Luis slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding in his chest. The truck skidded to a halt, and he stared into the fog, trying to make out what he had seen. It was a woman, dressed in a long white gown, her hair hanging in wet strands around her pale face. She stood motionless, her eyes locked onto his. Luis felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a ghostly figure said to haunt the waterways of Mexico, wailing for her lost children. But this couldn't be her, could it? Summoning his courage, Luis rolled down his window. "Bean," he called out. "Are you okay?" The woman did not respond. Instead, she slowly lifted her arm and pointed down the road. Luis's eyes followed her gesture, and he saw a faint, flickering light in the distance, a lantern, perhaps. He turned back to the woman, but she had vanished. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He had no choice but to continue. Luis put the truck in gear and slowly rolled forward, his eyes scanning the fog for any sign of the woman. The light grew brighter as he approached, and he soon realized it was coming from an old, decrepit gas station. The station looked abandoned, its windows boarded up, and its sign hanging precariously. But the lantern was real, casting an eerie glow across the forecourt. Luis pulled up beside one of the pumps, unsure of what to do. His fuel gauge showed he had enough to reach Acapulco, but something compelled him to stop. He stepped out of the truck, the cold night air biting at his skin. As he approached the lantern, he saw it was hanging from a hook beside the door. The door itself was slightly ajar, creaking on its hinges. Luis hesitated, then pushed it open and stepped inside. The interior was as dilapidated as the exterior, filled with dusty shells and cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of decay. Luis's footsteps echoed in the silence as he moved through the room. He called out, but his voice seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. Just as he was about to turn back, he heard a faint, whispering sound, like the rustle of leaves. He turned towards the noise and saw a figure at the far end of the room, partially hidden in the shadows. It was a man, dressed in tattered clothes, his face obscured by a hood. "Hola," Luis called out, his voice trembling. "Who are you?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move towards him, gliding silently across the floor. Luis backed away, his heart pounding. The figure stopped a few feet away and slowly lifted its head. When the hood fell back, Luis gasped. The man's face was a ghastly sight, pale and gaunt, with deep, hollow eyes that seemed to bore into Luis's soul. His mouth opened, and a raspy voice emerged. "You should not have come here." Luis felt a surge of panic. He turned and ran back to his truck, slamming the door behind him and locking it. He fumbled for the keys, his hands shaking, and finally managed to start the engine. The truck roared to life, and Luis sped away from the gas station, the fog closing in around him once more. His mind raced as he drove, trying to make sense of what he had seen. He knew he should report it, but who would believe him? He could barely believe it himself. All he knew was that he had to get off this road as quickly as possible. The road twisted and turned, the fog growing thicker with each passing mile. Luis's eyes strained to see beyond the haze, and he fought to keep the truck on course. He was so focused on the road ahead that he didn't notice the figure in the passenger seat until it was too late. Luis turned his head and saw her, the woman in white, sitting beside him, her eyes staring straight ahead. He let out a scream and swerved the truck, nearly running off the road. When he looked again, she was gone. He was losing his mind, the fear was overwhelming, and he felt like he was trapped in a nightmare. He had to get out of this forest, away from the ghosts and the fog and the terror that seemed to seep from every shadow. Hours seemed to pass, though he had lost all sense of time. The fog began to lift, and the first light of dawn broke through the trees. Luis felt a glimmer of hope as he saw a sign up ahead, an exit leading to a small village. He took the turn, desperate for human contact, for some semblance of normalcy. The village was quiet, the streets empty as he pulled into the main square. Luis parked the truck and stepped out, his legs shaking. He saw a small cafe and headed towards it, hoping to find someone who could help him. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and a middle-aged woman behind the counter looked up. "Buenos dias," she greeted him warmly. "What can I get you?" Luis felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Coffee, please," he said, his voice hoarse. As he waited for his drink, he noticed a newspaper on the counter. The headline caught his eye: "Mysterious Disappearances on El Camino de los Muertos." He picked it up and began to read, his heart sinking with each word. The article detailed a series of unexplained disappearances on the road, stretching back decades. Drivers who had vanished without a trace, their vehicles found abandoned along the route. There were mentions of ghostly sightings, strange lights, and eerie sounds. The legend of La Llorona was cited, along with other local myths. Luis's hands trembled as he put the paper down. He realized he had been lucky to escape with his life. He thanked the woman for the coffee and quickly left the cafe, determined to get as far away from El Camino de los Muertos as possible. As he drove through the village, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest, watching him. It was the woman in white. She raised her hand in a silent farewell, and Luis felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't stop until he reached Acapulco, the bright sun and the bustling city streets, a stark contrast to the horrors of the night. He delivered his load and checked into a hotel, his mind still reeling from the experience. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the road and the spirits that haunted it. He knew he would never travel El Camino de los Muertos again. Some roads, he realized, were better left unrevealed, their dark secrets buried in the shadows of the forest. And as sleep finally claimed him, Luis heard a faint, ghostly whisper in his ear, a reminder that some nightmares are all too real. Thanks for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. For more scary stories, please subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. See you soon.